this is Jacqueline from Jack Knits, and today we're going to learn how to do a very simple lace pattern, but then change it up a little bit and knit with a very different size yarn. Now I knitted this swatch with this simple lace pattern that we will review with a worsted weight yarn and a size 7 needle, and you can see that it's very delicate and a fine lace pattern. It would make for a beautiful baby blanket or a shawl. It will just lay and flow really nicely. But then I thought, what if we take this very same lace pattern, very simple, and change it up a little bit. Instead of knitting it with a worsted weight yarn, knit with a very super bulky weight yarn. And here is what the result is. Look at how fun and bulky that is. I am knitting a infinity scarf with it. It's knitting up really fast. I really haven't spent a lot of time and I'm almost done with it. So this will make just a warm, super blanket, but you can see that the same stitch, the exact same stitch as the delicate one, now is a very fun, bulky, chunky yarn just by changing the weight of the yarn. So let's take a look at how to do this stitch, but first the materials that I'm using. I am using, because it's such a thick yarn, I'm using a US size 13 needle. I am knitting this flat, but I am using circular needles, but if you like, you can use a flat size 13 needle as well. I am using a super chunky or super bulky weight yarn. It's a number 6 on the weight scale, and it is a wool ease. It's a wool and acrylic blend, and the color is mustard. So let's show you how to do this fun stitch. It's very, very easy. It is only a 4-row repeat, and 3 of the rows are just straight knit, so it's very easy to do. We're going to cast on, for this stitch, I cast it on 19 stitches for this scarf, for this wide of a scarf. But if you want to use this stitch for any other projects, just make sure you're casting on a multitude of 2 stitches, an even number of stitches, and then add 3. And that will give you the right number of stitches for this pattern. So the very first row, after you cast on your stitches, it's going to be the wrong side of your work, and the very first and second row for this project is just knit. Knit all stitches for 2 rows. So let me do that, and then we'll head on over to row 3. Okay, now that I finished the very first 2 rows of the stitch pattern, we turn our work again, and we're back on the wrong side of the work once again, and now this is the row that we're going to add a couple different stitches in it in order to incorporate this lace stitch pattern. Very first stitch of row 3 is just going to be a basic knit stitch. Then we're going to do 1 purl stitch, and now we're going to start a 2-stitch sequence through the end of the row. The very first stitch, with your yarn in front, do a yarn over. So wrap your yarn from the front over the top to the back, so it looks like that. And then we're going to purl the next 2 stitches together. So grab those 2 stitches and purl those 2 together. And that's our 2-stitch repeat to the end of the row. So you yarn over, then purl those 2 stitches together. And that is often what a lace pattern consists of, is a combination of yarn overs and then a decrease stitch. The yarn over is what creates the holes in the knitting, and when you do a yarn over, you're actually increasing the number of stitches on your needle, so you always have to compensate for that by doing a decrease for every yarn over that you do, so you end up with the same number of stitches on your needle. So let's just do again this yarn over and purl 2 together to the end of this 3rd row. We have 1 more stitch left, and we're just going to do a knit stitch. Okay, so now let's turn our work one more time for the last row, and the last row again is going to be just a solid knit row. So again, 3 rows of knitting for a 4-row repeat, so you'll realize that this is going to go super quick. You'll get it in your head really fast. So when you do the last row of knitting stitches, and you get to this yarn over stitch from the previous row, you see that it's a big old gap there, but just go ahead and knit right into that huge gap, because that is what creates that hole in your knitting for this fun lace pattern. So by knitting through that big gap, you create this big extra hole in your knitting, and that's what the look that we're trying to get for this lace pattern. So let's finish this row up with straight knitting. that is the 4-row repeat for this chunky lace pattern. So I'm just going to keep knitting until I run out of my yarn here. This is my second skein of yarn, and this was a 106 yard skein. So I believe 2 will work really nicely for the scarf. I'm going to then just seam my ends together, my cast on edge and my cast on edge and my bind off edge, and I think it'll make just a beautiful infinity cowl neck scarf. So I hope you give this a try, or try any type of really simple lace pattern and switch it up a little bit. Try a swatch with finer yarn and with bulkier yarn and see which you like better, and that might help you determine what your next project is. So thanks for watching, everyone. If you liked this, please give me a like. Don't forget to subscribe so you can receive notifications of new videos all about knitting tips and stitches and creative patterns. Thanks for watching, everyone. Happy knitting.